So, but now let's just look at Muhammad. So after everything that we have seen so far, we have seen Jesus being described as the Word, and we've seen that the authors of the Quran thought that he died, or rather that Allah actually made him to die, which probably means that humans couldn't kill him and so on. And then we get to the famous verses with Muhammad out of the four of them. And now with this new lens, after seeing that everything, they're just trying to hide meaning, this is what I would suggest, that if it says believed and worked corrections, those who believed and worked corrections and believed by what has been caused to continuously descend over Muhammad, the very first thing that would jump to my mind would be, okay, something descending on someone else, so that is going to be the Spirit descending on Jesus. That would be my first, like where my mind would go. And then when we keep reading, we have, and it is the truth from their Lord. I mean, the word the truth appears all throughout the Quran, but when we have it right there next to Muhammad, it makes me think, is this saying, and he, Muhammad, is the truth from their Lord? Or is it still meant to be that which descended is the truth from their Lord? And then at the end of the whole thing, this about cover up about them their affronts and corrected their state, is okay, but who did that exactly? Is that supposed to be their Lord, and this is actually talking about God, or is it supposed to be talking about the truth from their Lord, and it is Muhammad and it is Jesus? It's just that it is very, very packed with information or things that I would see that sounds very Christian, and also the fact that everything is talking in the past tense, even though every single translator out there, except for Murad, of course, would translate everything in the present, because it has to be Muhammad doing things in real time, as opposed to this telling a story about a Muhammad in the past and those who believed in the past on that Muhammad, and then someone covered up in the past their affronts and corrected their state. So what I would say is that this verse first is all in the past tense, and somebody needs to actually tell all of the translators out there, of course, except Murad, who is the only one who, of course, gets it right for obvious reasons. Then something descends on Muhammad. To me, I would think that actually sounds like it could be the Spirit. Then believe by that which descended. Well, what a coincidence. In Christianity, we would say things like believe by the Spirit. Okay. And it contains the sentence, it is the truth from their Lord, which maybe it can actually be read as he is the truth from the Lord, if it's one of these words in Arabic that can be either or, which is also a coincidence. And then who removes the sins and amends people's conditions in the past tense. It actually sounds like this could be 100% all about Jesus. Um, any thoughts or ideas or pushback?
Well, the idea of Muhammad removing sins and amending people's conditions is obviously absurd, given that he is known for his own misdemeanors, let's say. So it fits Jesus clearly much more than Muhammad of the sin.
And Murad, would you have any thoughts as to if this word here, if we were to read this thinking, yes, if we thought that that which descends is the Spirit and that Muhammad is Jesus, would it then make sense in the Arabic? Would it be like, and he is the truth from their Lord, and that is then what covers people's upfronts? Or what would be your interpretation of this if thinking that this is Jesus? Would it fit?
Yeah, there would be no problem if it is Jesus, وهو الحق, and he is the truth from their Lord, and he kept on atoning their sins. That would fit, so no problem. But why I had it as it, because I go with what's very much apparent in the text, and I don't look deep into nuanced, because I see the text just as it is. That's why I think it was the closer answer. You see?
Oh yeah, it wasn't, say, a criticism for us, even reading this all the time. We always thought that it actually referred to that which descends, which of course is it, and is only after much exploration into all of this that we thought, hang on a minute. So is the truth is that thing which the sense, or is it actually talking about Muhammad? And then we had that question mark for, okay, we need to actually get someone who understands these things to confirm either way, or at least say, no, it cannot be this, but it could be that. So thank you, Murad.
Both
That
are
actually
right.
puts our mind at ease.
Yeah. Both are right. It depends on the context and how you see it, but both are correct.
Great. And Mel, I think you actually lean towards this being probably about Jesus because of the past tense. Why would be talking about Muhammad all in the past tense? And then the translators, normally they would do it in the present tense, which I think is a clear giveaway. They know that there is something wrong there, and they try to hide it. Or at least it certainly looks like that. Let's see. Any other comments on this verse, or should we just move on to the last one before just a quick bonus round? No. So this one, maybe not to discuss this one in a lot of detail, but another of the verses that actually mentions Muhammad. So it's saying there, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. But then when it's talking then it refers to those who are with him. Okay. So in theory that it would be the Sahaba. But then when we keep reading, it actually mentions that their description is in the Torah and the Gospel, which is kind of weird. And the end of the verse is very much like Christian symbolism. It's talking about plant which produces its offshoots and strengthens them so they grow. It actually sounds very Christian to me, and I don't think the image of, say, the Sahaba would fit very well. But if this is all about Jesus and those with him, then the apostles, them being saying the Torah and the gospel would actually make more sense. So I would get a sense of this being more closely related to Christian imagery than Islamic one.
Yeah, JC, this is the verse I was referring to. If you just remove this purple part.
Yep.
Delighting the sowers. This word, the sowers, this is al-kuffar. This is the coverers. You see? So
Nice.
they always just gloss over it and translate it as farmer sowers and stuff.
Cool. Very interesting. So Mel, I don't know if you have any comments about this one, or
Yeah, I always thought that it was making a reference to the parable of the sowers, actually. So it's funny that they've chosen sowers rather than coverers.
It fits
Okay.
more with Jesus here.
Yeah.
Shock. Like most of the Quran is about that, and we see all of the things that they've hidden. So now this one is just as well. Very briefly, we had a show with our brother John the other day, and we were actually quite surprised when we were reading this beginning of Surah 48, because he read the translation from Murad. And then we said, hang on a minute, let's see what Daif International says. And if we start with Daif International, it says, well, indeed, we have given you, O Muhammad, compulsory addition, a clear conquest, and then that Allah may forgive for you, which of course then is implied that is Muhammad, because they said it's talking about him, what preceded of your sins and what will follow, and complete his favor upon you and guide you to a straight path. Okay, so this is talking to Muhammad. And then it ends with, and Allah may aid you with a mighty victory. But when we read the translation from Murad, it has nothing to do with Muhammad, nothing to do with fighting. And it actually sounds very much like they are giving you an evident opening when we take that into account that the book is talking about Jesus as the Messiah, and actually he dies and all of those things, that the clear opening would be a way for when it says for Allah to forgive for the what has progressed from thy guilt, is like, okay, so this is talking about the crucifixion and how your sins are forgiven, the change in covenant and all of those things, or at least that would be my reading of it.
Yeah, I can add to this. The opening, we were discussing it, the root, it has this idea of literally opening, but also specifically giving sight to the blind, as in like the opening of blind eyes. So in that sense, it's almost, like we have given thee given you sight, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, understanding of the Messiah, forgiving sins and all this. Also, it suggests to me this idea of the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right? Like the opening is here. There's the creak in the door. It's at hand. That's what it suggests to me as well. But yeah, so I would just echo your sentiments, Jesse.
Right. And I think after this point, we have a handful of slides, but we've gone on for very long. I don't want to take you guys too long. I want to know, are you guys okay with time, or should we call it a day and perhaps resume some other time? How are we feeling?
I'm probably good for. Yeah, I can go for another little while. See how it goes.
Great. Murad, are you okay as well to stay around for? Okay, cool. Phenomenal. So let's just then go through some bonus rounds. So the first one is kind of like silly. We haven't actually done any work on this one, but I just wanted to put it on the screen because I just found it hilarious. So just to a little bit of context, these are the verses that end up talking about the Houris in paradise. So I suppose that Muslims should be very, very interested in these verses. So indeed, the righteous will be in a secure place within gardens and springs, wearing fine silk and brocade, facing each other. Thus, and we will marry them to fair women with large, beautiful eyes. Oh, that's wonderful. So there is this website, which is from Shadi Nasser. He is collating all of these Qira'at, which is phenomenal. And we actually looked at this one. So the word for Huri, which is there, it has a Qira'at, and it shows like this. So B is sin, and then B Huri. And it's like, okay, the Rasam is very different. It's a completely different word. I don't know where it comes from, where he actually got this Qira'at, if it is one that Hatun Tash found, or if he found the record somewhere. But we just find it interesting because when I put these words in Google Translate, this is what it said. The full word, just like that, Google Translate said with a donkey, which I'm pretty sure is not going to be the case, but just showing what it said. And then by removing the prefix, Google Translate approximated it to say, well, that's Jesus. So I'm not making any claims here saying before it was that people will be married with Jesus in paradise, which would actually make sense with a Christological language. I just found it to be very interesting that such an important word for Muslims is the reward in paradise. We would have that word, which Google Translate did something funny with. So the idea was I was going to put this on a screen, and if anybody watching wanted to explore Qira'at, maybe they would actually start with this one and then let us know if they find something very, very cool.
Because it's very interesting how the orthography, it's very reminiscent of the orthography for Isa, right? Because can you move one back so we can see the Qira'at, please? Thanks. So in here where we see the form is B, so that's by, so with, right? And then you have the Ain Ya Sin, but it's missing the final Ya, which this is just like trying to deduce things, right? That suggests that in the name Isa itself, the Ya is a suffix. Do you see what I'm saying? Where Isa seems to be using that form, Ain Ya Sin, but with a Ya at the end as well. And that could mean something like my something, son of Mary. So just to point that out, right? So the obvious overlap between the orthographies of this form, this Qira'at that we see here, and the orthography for the spelling of Jesus.
Yeah, and we just wanted to actually put it there for anybody in the community who had an interest in Qira'at. So again, we haven't actually done any work on this, but when I saw that Google Translate, the first rendering that it gave would be something like, and they will be married with a donkey, I thought, okay, fine, this has to go on a slides, and hopefully something will actually look into it.
So there is, so Yasin can refer to Jesus. Am I understanding that correctly?
No. Okay, no. I'm making a case about the orthography of Isa. It's spelled Ain Ya Sin Ya in the Quranic text. This kirat that we see here in the context of who are the believers marrying? It's saying
Yeah.
with Ein Ya Sin. It translates in the Google Translate as donkey or whatever. That's the sin gloss, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, what is this Ein Ya Sin pointing to? Because that is the root that we see in the orthography for the name supposedly of Isa, Jesus.
Yeah.
So there's an overlap there.
Because you know when these strange letters that you find in the Quran, I know Yasin appeared, but I wonder if there's Ein Yasin.
We can maybe comment on that a little bit. Yasin, it starts with a wa, right? Yashu. So we were just speculating that Yasin the mukata'at may be part of an actual full word, where the supposed and may be part of that. We're just speculating. We didn't find anything concrete, but potentially, essentially, the idea would be Yasin could be read as Yashuwa, with the wa coming from the first word of the verse being and. But that and could be part of a word.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well,
I just
so
wanted to
anyway,
mention,
yep.
Yeah, that here, Ba'isin, the status it's called here shawaz, meaning bizarre. So this is one of the very bizarre readings, rare and bizarre. I didn't know about it before, but it's definitely interesting. And also, when it says zawajnahum, it's always just translated as married, but I think in Aramaic it has two meanings. One of them meaning kind. So Noah, he took two kinds. And it also means plurality. So pluralize. So you are not single now, you are plural. You have another person. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting this out because it might help, because these verses, of course, are some of the hardest to decode.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible that when we are, most of us working using the Hafs version, that some words can, or some verses cannot be unpicked because they already changed things. And maybe with some of those verses, we're incredibly lucky, and Shadi Nasser gets one of the kirats that actually shows the very original meaning, and we can get it through that. But we haven't actually done any work with the kirat. We've been on his website quite a few times, and it is phenomenal, including the verses that talk about Muhammad, and there are quite a few things that are different in there. So hopefully we will at one point have the time to look at that. But otherwise, if anyone watching wants to actually get involved in doing some research, I would say that the Qira'at would be a phenomenal place where to start, because a lot of things can probably be found in there. Most of us were working with the Hafs, and it's probably going to be a gold mine. So
I would say that
Yep.
that the verses before this are very reminiscent of Ephraim, the Syrian, who describes paradise and is very much talking about Jesus in the midst of that. So your interpretation there would fit very, very nicely with Saint Ephraim.
The marriage with
And-
Christ in paradise, yeah, or the joining with Christ to be with him.
Yeah, I'm sure that
Yeah.
that would actually change the theology of Islam.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
boy.
would.
All right. So the final argument back to Muhammad. So Muhammad only appears 4 times. We've seen 2 verses already. The fourth one, which we're not going to discuss, is just very vague, and you have to actually go to many verses before and after to make any sort of argument. But this one is very interesting, because we have here, so from Daif International, Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but Murad says that's actually past tense. And it is very interesting. When we see the translators, we see all of those there. Muhammad is not, everything in the present tense, making it sound as though he is right there and talking to the crowd. But hang on a minute. If it is past tense, it changes everything. And it poses a number of questions. If it is saying, actually, let's just look at the verse again. So Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but the messenger of Allah and the last of the prophets. And ever is Allah of all things knowing. Okay, great. So I would have a number of questions. The first one is, why are all of the translators getting it wrong and doing this in the present tense? I would say they want to push a narrative and make it sound as though Muhammad is there talking to people in the present tense. But then it gets as well more interesting. Why would it actually even say this? Why would it say Muhammad was not the father of any of your men, but Rasulullah? It's like, if he's a messenger, well, I think according to Islam, I can be wrong about this, but I think lots of people are messengers. They can call Moses a messenger, and he has kids. So they're not mutually exclusive. If this verse, I think according to the narrative, Muhammad had sons, and then they died, and then this was revealed. And then after this, he had sons, but not at this very specific moment in time. But he had sons like before and after. I think they were trying to patch up this little problem. But it is just not, or it shouldn't be exclusive. If this was revealed a few years before or a few years after, what would it read? Muhammad is the father of some of your men, but he is the messenger. These two statements are not exclusive. So what I would put forward is that this comment only makes sense if it is talking again about Jesus. And going back to something we discussed very early on, and Mel, you brought up when we were talking about the word and saying Jesus is the kalimatuhu, then the messenger and the word and his word. So if his job was to be just a messenger, he was not here on earth to have a family, to leave descendants. He was literally the messenger. He had a message, and that was all he was going to do. Then this verse would make sense, saying Muhammad was not the father of any of your men. He didn't have any descendants. What he was the messenger of Allah with one mission to accomplish, and he was the seal of all prophets. And I would say that it doesn't make sense if this is about Muhammad, but it would make perfect sense if it is about Jesus.
And to build
Yeah, I
off
would add,
that, sorry, Mel, just real quick, I just want to add that there were people at the time and before who were making lineage claims to Christ. This is brushed over in the history because we don't really need to care about this, right, in the Western history and all that. But there were people making claims of being descendants of Jesus. And these were referred to as the people of God, the family of God, and things like this in the traditions. Even one of the Byzantine emperors called, I forget who exactly, up to witness in court about this question of whether they are descendants of Christ. So it made its way all the way up to the emperor. So this makes sense of why this would even be a question, because if you could put forward, okay, if this is Jesus, why is there even a question coming up about whether he had kids or not? And this would offer an explanation for that, because people were making lineage claims, so therefore you have to counter them.
Yeah, this probably connects parallels with what you're saying. If we look at what was called the Standing Caliph coin, but actually I think it's the Angel of the Lord coin, it claims that he was not begotten nor neither was begotten nor begotten, if I'm saying it correctly. The idea is that in asserting the idea that Jesus is the angel of the Lord, he is not a creature in the human sense, so therefore when he's born into the world, but he is not humanly begotten. Now there's a difference in the Syriac meaning of begotten from the Greek, and so they very much objected to the Greek concept of begotten, because they had a more human sense of it. So there was a denial of that Jesus was begotten, not in the creedal sense, and also as that Jesus ever had any children. And I think what you said about the claim of being a descendant of Jesus would have been the reason for denial of that. I don't know if that makes sense there, but
it does. Yeah, I understand.
Yep. And we know about the claims as well, because in the end, the Sunni Shia splits is about that. Someone saying, hey, we actually have a claim there. So these things were probably quite common. And yes, the final bit, just to try to tie everything together, which is this other verse here, Surah 6, verse 101, because it's talking about the originator of the heavens and the earth, saying, how can he have a son when he does not have a companion? And once again, we have Murad saying, well, that's actually past tense. So well, let's see what the translators actually say about it. So we have all of those in red. They are talking in the past tense. The ones in green, I put them there because it's like present perfect or something like that, which actually indicates from the past up to the present, but still it should be past, and they don't translate it like this. So he has no mate, he has had no spouse, and so on, and all of those. So now that we have seen all of that and how they saw Jesus, and seeing that the verses that talk about Muhammad, they seem to be talking, or an argument can certainly be made for that being about Jesus, and I certainly believe that that's what they thought. Then we have this one. We started saying that the very first arguments, the Quran called Jesus the Word. Now, for any Christian, they would know immediately that the word is associated with creation. So it's not just a random word or Messiah. Everything has a particular meaning. But the word of God that is actually mentioned in the Quran. Okay, so could the Quran mean Jesus when it is talking about the creator? And when we see that this verse here is once again talking in the past tense and saying that he didn't have a companion, then it sounds very much like it has to be talking about Jesus, for a simple reason. If it is Allah and says, well, how can Allah have a son if he didn't have a companion? And it's like, okay, so then Allah can have a son. He just needs to find a companion. When he finds a girlfriend, he will have a son, right? That's the implication. Also, the other problem is Allah would be questioning his own power, saying, how would it actually be possible? But if we see this through the lenses of everything that we've discussed today, I would say that to these people, Jesus was the Word of God and therefore also the Creator. And this sentence was simply saying, just like with the thing with Muhammad, that he didn't have any descendants. And in here it says, well, he didn't have a companion. Like in the past, when he was on earth, this is obviously speaking in the 6th century, 7th century. So it's talking in the past tense. The creator didn't have a companion when he was on earth. And the whole thing with word, we wouldn't have to go very deep in the Bible. We just go to John 1 and we see in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. So I would say Muhammad is Jesus, the creator is Jesus, Jesus is the Word, and whoever wrote this book could not have been the Muhammad of the standard Islamic narrative, because he would not have said all of these things. It wouldn't make any sense. And also because Muhammad is just not in the book. The verses are talking about Jesus. That would be my take.
And also it can't, even on a base level, it can't possibly refer to Allah logically, because the text is referring to something in the past tense, right? It's saying that
Yes.
he, if we assume it's Allah, he did not have a mate. No, if you're talking about Allah, timeless, spaceless, you do not refer to him not having had a mate in the past tense. Doesn't work. It only works if you're talking about a time, space, human who created all things, that being Jesus.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay, and that's actually just the end of this presentation. It has taken quite a while. Thank you very much for actually enduring through all of these slides, but I thought that we had to actually make sure that we had as many things as possible, and this is not for people who are just new to this channel and to this content. This is not like us taking verses out of context and saying, here you go. This is not even the peak of the iceberg. It is just a very small preview. There is countless verses that we are seeing just like this, and every time that we open Murad's translation, we see more and more problems with the narrative, things that contradict Islam. So it is just a very, very small fraction of what it is. In fact, the peak of the iceberg is the Quran itself, and the traditions is everything that is below the waters. So what did you think, gentlemen?
I think you've built a very compelling case, and it corroborates a lot of the claims both myself and Jay have been making over the last few years. And we've, as you know, I've got a lot of heat for it, but you're coming at it from a different angle and coming to a similar conclusion. So this is very welcome indeed.
Yeah, the angle we're coming at is that we were both independently becoming familiar with the traditions, right? So we were, I mean, in my case, I'll speak for myself. I was, listening to 2x speed restreams of Christian prints like constantly. I was just trying to absorb all this information because there's so many traditions, right? So I was trying to learn all the traditions. And then I realized, okay, if I really want to know more about Islam, I started to look at other avenues. I saw your material, Mel, and also the material from Jay Smith questioning whether Muhammad even existed. And I was like, wait, 4 instances and all this. So I figured, okay, let me see the primary source. If all of this comes from the Quran, let's look at the Quran itself. So that's where the investigation moved to, and that's where it's now well seated. That at
Very
least on
good.
my end of things, all I do is look at the Quran. I read the Quran more than the Bible at this point, way more, and hopefully we sort all this mess out, and then I can go back to reading more Bible. So yeah.
This it's been a very fruitful endeavor. I think you are really on the cusp of something incredible. This is the sort of evidence that everyone should be using, rather than just repeating the standard Islamic narrative, which has been done infinitely now, and without really progressing things on. So this is great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would
keep,
say that the Hadith traditions are designed to distract you from looking at the text.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, keep stabbing the sin because it's bad for your health.
Yeah, very good.
It's very well put. So yeah, throughout everything that has been happening over the last couple of months or so, for us, or rather, I will speak for myself, it felt odd to see so many people, or quite a few people, still defending like Muhammad and saying, but there is no sources that Muhammad or MHMD was used in the 7th century in Arabia. And it's right there. We all have it. It's called the Quran. But they are not reading the Quran. We are reading, everybody's reading that the tafsirs that are superimposed. When we're looking at the Quran, it's almost like a palimpsest. We have the text, but then on top of it, we have all of these other stories, and that's what we are reading. When we remove them, it's like, oh, look, here we have a source of Jesus being called the MHMD right there in the right region, and probably en masse. So it shouldn't be actually that this difficult. We're in the 21st century, but I think there are too many people still reading the likes of Daif International and saying, well, but the Quran says, and it's like, no, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the
I
people. Yeah, Mel, just let me say this
yeah,
sentence.
carry on.
The people who defend the sin from all sides, there is something very critical that they don't know. Is that, let's look at Al-Tabari, for example. His work keeps getting fatter by the centuries because people are adding to it and attributing it to him. They will not attribute it to random people. So they will say, well, Al-Tabari said so. So the books keep getting fatter with the centuries, especially during the Ottoman times. And this is an avenue that no one is exploring. So they think that Al-Tabari wrote this huge, voluminous work, which is not true.
I would say for those who are defending the sin, let's call it, don't concede so much ground to Islam. I would say question everything. Make sure if you're quoting the Quran that actually you are quoting the Quran and not an addition that someone in the 1990s has added in order to make the Quran make more sense. And we see that, that sort of mistake happening, particularly with Christian apologetic websites or channels. And it shouldn't be a mistake that people are making, even if they're using an internal critique. They should at least be acknowledging what's in the Quran and what isn't, and not giving so much ground to Islam. Be a little bit more critical would be my advice.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
reason some
yes,
people they are acting this way and defending the sin is because they do not have the capability to make work like JC and Cash. They cannot do that. So
Yeah.
they want to just rest in their comfort zone and keep battling the sin, battling in the same old technique. That's the whole
Yeah.
idea. They are not willing to investigate these new avenues. That's the problem.
But willing to hammer the people who are willing to investigate.
Yes, because they
yeah.
fear them. They feel that they are stealing their thunder. They think so. That's the idea.
Yeah.
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 Unfortunately, it really is the case that like the phenomena here would be akin to someone, showing up and, saying, "Oh, you're an expert in the traditions." Well, that's like no different from being, a lore nerd of Star Wars, effectively.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you know all the lore so well. That's great. Can we get to the text now?"
Yeah.
But Star Wars is much better, Cash.
Yes, it certainly
I
doesn't have as
agree.
many plot holes. And
True.
yeah, I agree. In the past, I think until quite recently, apologists and stuff would just work with what they had. And most of the stuff would be obviously all of these horrible translations and so on. But instead of stopping there and saying, okay, this is what it is, it would really help everybody. And I mean, the whole world, if they would keep questioning things and say, hang on a minute, I've been reading this verse for a long time in this manner, but was I lied to? Because the guys who did those translations, they're pretty much the people in the same mindset who are saying, oh, the Quran doesn't say that Jesus died. It says that he fell asleep. And it's like, no, the Quran actually says that he died. Okay, so can we actually just get some things straight and then build upon it? So it's the same mentality that have been translated things into English wrong, and the tafsir writers 1,000 years ago also lying. So it is exactly the same thing. I think it's about time that we actually push through those lies and, like Murad said, keep stabbing the sin because it's not good for you.
Yeah. I would add maybe that when something seems too odd, like for example, some passage like the backbone and the ribs and all that kind of thing, something is really odd, rather than assuming that the author is dumb or stupid, maybe it might be, maybe we should actually question that and say, actually, maybe we have got the wrong end of the stick, or someone has mistranslated it somehow.
Right. So instead of assuming that the author was dumb, maybe we should assume for a second that we're the dumb ones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, or actually I will expand on that as well and say, using the same argument, that we are not, Kash and I, we're not Christian apologists. So if we were, maybe we would take that and show to Muslims and say, oh, you see, your book says that you were created from a fluid emanating from between the backbone and the ribs. So this is silly. This cannot be from God. Maybe we would use that argument, but that's not what we are. We are researchers. So we're looking at that verse and saying, it doesn't make sense. Let's actually see if we can figure out what it said, because it cannot say that. So I think that is a different mindset.
I would feel weird. I would feel weird. This is my intuition. Like, I can't actually engage in these conversations about the traditions anymore, because I know, like, my inclination is that if I'm in a conversation where I have to implicitly affirm something I know to be false, just for like a pragmatic, apologetics or something, I can't do it. So it's like, hey, you want to have a conversation about Aisha? Like, look, I'm not interested. This is all smokes and mirrors. I don't need to waste my time with this.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
By the way, Aisha was never mentioned in any historical source. Ever.
What?
I don't doubt that. I mean, we do have an Aisha, right? Who was like the wife of Abdul Malik or something. We have like one of these characters.
There is something there is something in Pseudo Jonathan. The Targum of Pseudo Jonathan.
That's the only one. Yeah, you're right.
But it's 4th century rather than 7th century, according to whatever her name is.
Copied from the traditions, but that's the only one in it.
Yeah.
Any source, when it mentions Muhammad, sometimes it mentions Khadija, but it seems that Aisha is fake.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly it fits with the whole narrative where just about everything is fabricated. Oh well, I think it's getting now probably quite late for quite a few of us. So I think maybe we should just call it a day. Gentlemen, Mel, Murad, thank you very much for actually popping over and for having this discussion. We are one phone call away whenever you actually need us for anything. And anything that we have done, you have access to absolutely everything. It's not like we're copywriting anything. So hopefully we will manage to do more stuff with you in the future. And hopefully we will manage to make people around the world to start looking at the Quran for what it was once upon a time and not for what they think it is now.
Exactly. Thanks very much for having us on. It's been an absolute blast. I can't believe it's 3.5 hours. It didn't feel like that to me, so that's always a good sign. So thanks, guys.
Time flies when we're stabbing the sin.
Exactly.
This is the second longest stream now. The only longer one we've ever done was the one where we did 4 hours on the word Quran. So this is number 2 now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any final words from anyone before we call it a day?
I'm just happy to be with you here. It was very nice, and Mel will say a similar word now, and then I want to hear you guys.
Yeah, no, I'll just reiterate what I've just said. It's been great, and I hope people just share this with lots of people. And I think there was so many nuggets in this. It'd be well worth making shorts from a lot of this material, because it's just. I know a lot of people won't have the time or energy to sit through 3 hours, but it's definitely is worth. It's definitely.
Feel free to cut it off. Make shorts, everything. Use this content in any transformative manner possible. It's all about getting the message out there.
I think, and the people who are watching as well, just cut up these into snippets that people can manage and share it. So that we're changing the narrative and the conversation around this, that people actually can see that we're not crazy. We actually have collectively, we're doing the work. We're not just throwing on a camera and flying into it. We've done the groundwork. In fact, in this case, you guys have done the groundwork on this one. This is just absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you for that. That's, coming from someone I was watching on YouTube, it feels like meeting your hero moment type thing. It's a real pleasure and a real honor that both of you, because both of you are giants to us. This whole thing started on our end because we got our hands on Murad's translation, and the rest is history. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us on this stream, and total pleasure.
Yeah, actually second that. We pretty much started one of my penny drop moments where saying actually both of you speaking with Jay Smith about the verses that talk about Muhammad. So that's one of the big moments of, okay, this actually needs to be explored, because if Muhammad is not there, what else are we reading wrong in the Quran? But like Kash said, that's now history and we're moving on. So Mel, Murad, thank you very much for popping over. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you around, and thank you for your support. And Kash, thank you very much for everything, as always. For people watching, we hope that you actually like the stream. I should have remembered to say, like, subscribe, share, all those things. I'm very bad at doing that, as always. But anyway, we will be back most likely on Friday as we try to stick to our schedules. Please make sure that you actually, everybody listening already follows Murad and Mel, but make sure that you actually share this content as well to other people so that they know that they shouldn't just be defending a Muhammad who is not even in his own book. So thank you very much for being here, watching and interacting with the chat. We hopefully see you on Friday. And until then, stay well and God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There is only one Quran, right? Every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie! 26 different Qur'an!
There are 0 Dawa guys apparently left on the planet.